This video is brought to you by Guardio. Stick around to hear more about their cybersecurity Chrome extension. Alright, today's video isn't as flashy, I guess I'll say, as some of my recent coverage, but in an online world where the line between fact and fiction is becoming harder and harder to see, I thought it was a decent topic to cover. Everyone watching this, most likely, has already heard of fake news, disinformation, also sometimes called misinformation, and the list goes on. These terms are specifically designed to convey a strong negative connotation, but how much of a problem is it really? To some, it's no big deal. The internet, by and large, is full of information, true or not, and rather than some sort of governmental authority, we as viewers, listeners, or social media browsers, whatever the case may be, are responsible for what we see, read, and most importantly, what we personally believe. I'm inclined to agree with this, but today I want to take a specific example of fake news, analyze it, and discuss why the problems that led to its virality in the first place haven't gone anywhere at all, and are almost certainly going to cause problems again in the near future. To make this video possible, I was lucky enough to watch, in real time I might add, as a story went viral on Twitter with regards to its prior CEO, Parag Agrawal. I don't remember precisely when I became aware, but the gist of it is that I was able to catch the story before mainstream fact checkers caught wind, and before it had been able to spread exponentially across most of social media, at the very least Twitter and Facebook. The article in question is this, at least the first version of the article, which has since been dramatically changed. Headline, Former Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal arrested for child porn, end quote. Now, this came out on Christmas Eve of all days, which is kind of despicable in and of itself, with the earliest available reference seeming to come from an account named Entium. But very quickly, as in a few hours later, the story had gone viral with escalating mentions and major accounts referencing it as a truth. Just one problem, it is not in fact true, as you obviously could have surmised based on the title and the subject of the video, and it seems to be a purpose-built falsity that was released by a publication that very clearly profits from muddying the waters of political discourse with manufactured headlines and deceptive information. Before going further, let's talk about Guardio. I am a very vocal advocate for online security. Almost everything you do online carries a tremendous amount of risk these days, and Guardio, a Chrome extension that offers threat tracking and online protection, is here to help with that. Internet browsers are windows into our digital lives, but that window kind of goes both ways. Browsers often store banking information, personal details, login credentials, and more. This is done for convenience, but convenience also has a price. Guardio, unlike traditional threat response software that only reacts or tells you when your system has already been compromised, will work proactively to detect threats before they ever reach your browser, and today they've asked that I specifically discuss a new feature called Teams. Nowadays, a great deal of us will use the same computer for absolutely everything. Work, personal activities, you name it, it happens, but with that general purpose mindset comes a tremendous amount of risk. One wrong click can take down an entire business, but Guardio is here to help with that. With Guardio, you will be given information on when or where leaks occur, and you can also see clearly who in the team is protected and who isn't. Basically, administrators are able to see threats in real time and deal with them while protecting the entire network with Guardio's identity tools and phishing prevention. Guardio also offers a host of additional services, from download protection to data breach alerts, and will help protect you and your browser from up to 10 times more online threats than current competitors. If you click the link down below right now, you can get a 7-day free trial of Guardio's initial services, as well as a 14-day free trial of the Guardio Teams feature. Big thank you to Guardio for sponsoring the channel. Let's dive in. The examples here are honestly endless. Just search for Parag Agrawal arrested, Parag Agrawal child porn, or Parag Agrawal pedophile, etc., etc. All these different keyword phrases. And you'll get thousands and thousands of results from people that collectively hold millions of followers with tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions of views. Even now, right now, this long after the fact, there are people posting this article as if it's real, demonstrating that the initial false claim spreads exponentially further than actual evidence. But the thing I really want to focus on is how it happened in the first place. This right here is the Vancouver Times, responsible for crafting the article in question, and rather than making definitive statements, I'd simply like to describe the reality of this website, allowing viewers to draw their own conclusions. The article in question has now been updated, but for the moment I want to focus on what it was, not what it became under intense pressure of public outcry. The original version, archived by the Wayback Machine, contains precisely 0 references to satire. The article is not labeled as satire, it doesn't even appear in some sort of satire section of the website, and going further, if you scroll the disclaimer page of the site, there is, once again, 0 acknowledgement that they post satire in any capacity. There is exactly one page of the entire website where satire is ever mentioned, which reads, Vancouver Times is the most trusted source for satire on the West Coast. We write satirical stories about issues that affect conservatives, end quote. Sounds good, right? That's a pretty clear acknowledgement, even if it's tucked away outside the title, individual articles, news pages, and disclaimers on its own separate location. But what if I told you that things get even more sketchy? According to the description on their website, one might expect, and would be forgiven for thinking so, that satire is their primary coverage. But again, not so much. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Headline: Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin announces cancer diagnosis. That right there isn't satire. It's identified the same way on a website with a singular acknowledgement in the first place, but this story is actually true, which we can see cross-referenced here on NBC, which posted the same story on the very same day. Want another example? Okay. Here's a scenario in which the Vancouver Times published a story with regards to Republican Congressman George Santos. Quote, prosecutors open criminal investigation into Republican George Santos for allegedly lying about his background. End quote. Turns out that one is also true, reported on just 3 days later by the New York Times, as well as a myriad of other publications in tow, which begins to form a pattern. Not everything published by the Vancouver Times is actually satire. One final example here to really drive home the point. This article, right here, contrary to the claim that this is a satire publication, pertains to Attorney General Merrick Garland. Specifics on what it says really aren't that important because the entire thing, word for word, was simply copied and pasted from the Daily Wire, which is an actual news publication, regardless of one's individual political views on it, attempting to cover American news with at least defensible accuracy. Basically, the Vancouver Times isn't a satire website, at least not in any rigid sense of the word, seeing as it often either plagiarizes or uniquely commentates on actual news stories from legitimate outlets. Still, by itself, that means nothing. Websites are allowed to have multiple sections, they are allowed to do multiple things, and there's no intrinsic problem with having separate verticals until those verticals overlap in what I would guess is a fully deliberate way. Let me explain. The original satire article claiming that Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal had been arrested for possession of child pornography, resulting in tens of millions of collective views at least, was written by a man named Jason Perez. Now, if we look at the article history for Jason Perez, we see something very interesting. These two articles right here are the items of interest. Headline number 1, Manhunt continues for stabbing suspects in Saskatchewan, end quote, and headline number 2, NBA legend Bill Russell dies from COVID jab, end quote. The first story about the manhunt is largely true. According to CBC, as well as other cross-referenced outlets, the manhunt took place in Canada, and at the time of publication at least, on September 4th, 2022, it was an ongoing police action. The second headline about Bill Russell, NBA legend, is a lot more tricky, because this one is actually half true. Bill Russell did die, peacefully, but no autopsy was ever performed, meaning that it's impossible to know for sure if the COVID vaccine played any part at all in his death. On top of this, the article references something that is rather common for the Vancouver Times, which is a media blackout where reputable outlets refuse, quote unquote, like big air quotes around that, refuse to cover the story. Quote, the mainstream media has provided limited coverage on the arrest of the globalists that masterminded the plandemic. And right beneath that, quote again, the mainstream media and big tech want to hide the truth, beat them at their own game by sharing the article, end quote. That claim, the idea that media is hiding the big stories, is echoed on nearly all of the fake articles I reviewed, but isn't shown on the real articles. Go figure. For those, you get something like, this is an ongoing story, or you get a quote because they plagiarized the entire thing. But the main thing to remember is that when the Vancouver Times decides to post something plausible but fake, they obfuscate it even further by claiming that it's a hard-hitting story, so that's why no one else covers it, because of media collusion, not because they're posting fake news. Where am I going with all this? Well, the middle headline, in addition to the third headline, pertain to articles that are not even tagged as satire. These articles are tagged as America, and specifically the article about Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz is a complete fabrication, tucked away between true and half-true neighbors. What's more, if we go back through the archives, we can see that even the fake story about Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal was previously listed under the America tag as well, not satire, and was only updated after the story went viral and got aggressively debunked. Think about this. A website claiming to be a news publication has one of the weakest satire disclaimers you could possibly make, almost like it's intentional, on a page that isn't even actually tied to their disclaimers at all. That same website has provably taken full articles from other outlets with zero changes, like literally zero changes, actual copy-paste, that are true, and sprinkled them in to lend credibility to itself. The website also chooses to publish intermittent but true developing stories about police actions or politicians, only to then insert deliberately fake news with false identifying tags and a preemptive claim that the only reason you didn't hear about it elsewhere was some sort of media corruption factor. Not even done, because when they get caught, and they have gotten caught before, and only after they have gotten raked over the coals for spreading fake news, they will adjust the tags, add a little disclaimer, and hide behind a paper-thin defense that it was only satire, bro. But even in their disclaimer, they make mistakes. After updating the original article on Twitter's CEO, adding in more tweets that condemn his character and make it seem like the original claim of arrest might be true, which is slimy all by itself, but that's a whole separate topic, they also put in a disclaimer saying, quote, "This is a satire article. For more information on our website, go to the About Us section or read the disclaimer," which is a link, end quote. But when you click the disclaimer, the active hyperlink there is not a single mention of satire in the entire page. Think about that. This website is deliberately blurring the lines between what is true and what is false by publishing plagiarized stories, half-true articles, and then inserting false label satire that isn't even properly defined as satire, which results in viral social media trends on both Facebook and Twitter. Millions and millions of people saw the headline, they saw the fake news circulate, and most of them probably have never and will never see the correction. The Vancouver Times is taking hot-button societal or cultural political issues, manufacturing lies as if that somehow qualifies as satire, and then camouflaging them for maximum believability. That right there, that is what people mean when they say the words fake news. That's basically a buzzword now and doesn't really hold meaning, but it should hold meaning in situations like this. But sadly, the ratio of people that see, believe, and regurgitate these lies versus the people that see it, debunk it, and move on is completely unbalanced. My purpose today was not to say that everyone should just immediately stop reading the Vancouver Times, though you probably would be well served if you did that. That would be useless anyway, though, because not everyone will listen, and nothing I say will have any meaningful impact on that front. But instead, I want to advocate that all of us, like every single person that watches this and every single person that you talk to about anything even remotely similar, should dig a little bit deeper than headlines. I've toyed with the idea of doing a how to do your own research video, never really committing to it, but if videos like these can have even a small, marginal impact on the number of fake news stories that are taken seriously and go viral on social media, well, that'd be a huge win. My own personal speculation here, Jason Perez probably makes a lot of money doing this, and the satire tag is just a flimsy way of distancing the website from obvious repercussions of publishing wantonly false information about major CEOs, companies, and public figures, or politicians as well. I can't sit here and pretend to know whether or not they're on the wrong side of the law with this, especially because it's also a Canadian outlet, right? So I don't really have authority to speak on that. But they are definitely, certainly, on the wrong side of morality with this. Hopefully more people can wake up to that. Anyway, that's it. If you want to support, please check out the links down below, primarily locals and Patreon, but also merch, social media, a YouTube competitor named Odyssey, where all my content is joint uploaded, and more, such as the video sponsor. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. The Vancouver Times is terrible. I just want to add that in there, and have a nice night.